Hi, welcome to KiwaniTalk. We're a public information program put together by the people from the Dearborn Kiwanis Club with help from faculty and some students at Dearborn High School, my alma mater. My name is Gary Gardner. Welcome to the longest running cable access television show in the entire world and probably most of the known universe. This is KiwaniTalk. Welcome to the show, and to talk about Dearborn and things like that and state representatives and government, we have our, I say new, but you've been kind of old now.
It feels like a long time.
We have our State Representative Abdullah Hammoud. Welcome to the program.
Thank you
Welcome
so
back
much
to the program. You were here
2 years ago?
2 years ago, before you had your, it wasn't a landslide, but your victory in the election. And welcome, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me back.
Don't be a stranger.
Yeah. I mean, the more invites I get, the more I am to attend. So
Yeah,
please.
That's good. You were a Dearborn person. How long have you lived in Dearborn?
Born and raised. Born in Oakwood Hospital. We also know it as Oakwood. Raised in Dearborn. I am a Fortune tractor. So it's
You're in the enemy territory.
I am very much in enemy territory. I am a Woodworth Hornet. I'm a McDonald's Panther. I'm about as Dearborn as it gets, I think, and that's what I like to put forward.
Oh, what college?
University of Michigan, Dearborn. Henry Ford College during dual enrollment. I mean, it's
the whole thing. Yeah.
Exactly,
So
the whole gambit.
Dearborn. That's one of the things about Dearborn, though, that Dearborn is you were cradled. I want to say the grave because you're still pretty young, but you can pretty much do it all in Dearborn with all the things that we have here.
It's a beautiful city. I mean, my first job was at the Henry Ford Village Retirement Home. I've worked all throughout the city. My mother owns a small business in the city. My father used to deliver steel for the autos in the south end, the industrial part of our city, when the Rouge plant was still around. And so Dearborn is credited to providing my family with economic opportunity, financial freedom, and it's paved the way for me to be where I am today.
And something compelled you to run for political office. And now you're finishing up your end of your first term here. You got elected in 2016.
Correct.
What was it that made Abdullah decide, I'm going to run for state rep? What possessed you to do that?
Yeah, I worked in the healthcare sector for many years. And I had several jobs working in the policy realm.
Wait. Many years. You're just a young guy too.
Yeah, I am young. Full disclosure, I am young. But I graduated at a much earlier age. I got into my master's program at 19, was out by 21. And so I had about 5 years of work experience in the healthcare world, and where I got to work in healthcare policy, environmental policy, with some statewide organizations. And I quickly realized that policy was this lever for change. But I did not feel as if we had a voice in Lansing, and we meaning Dearborn. And Dearborn has paved the way, as I said earlier, to my success and to my family's success. And what better way to give back than to give back to this community that provided my family with everything. And so I left kind of, the corporate sector, as they say, and I wanted to go back to public service, something I was very passionate about. And now I'm able to utilize this platform to just really elevate our values and principles and our issues up in Lansing.
Talk about running for election. It was one of my favorite things. I ran a bunch of times. Was the process hard, and now you're doing it again?
Yeah.
What's that like, going back to places you were last time?
The first time is much different than the second. The first time was much more difficult, much more intense, given it was a much heavier election, many more candidates. We knocked nearly 25,000 doors the first time around. We had 20 points of contact with every likely primary voter. It got to the point where people were frustrated with seeing my face so many times. The mailman actually told me, "I'm tired of passing out your mail." Real story. And I was sick of looking at my own face, frankly. But just this tenacity that we put forth in the first campaign. Fast forward to this campaign, we're not taking anything for granted. We still want to be out there, keep our ground, keep our ears to the ground, understand what residents are concerned about, and make sure that's what we're advocating for. So we're still on target to knock 15,000 doors throughout this summer and this fall. I've had several coffee hours every month. We have another 3 town halls scheduled for the remainder of this election cycle. We've had several before. And we just want to continue this conversation with residents. We're meeting them where they are. We're joining community events such as the Healthy Dearborn Walk and Roll, which I've led a few times, being able to interact with various residents from throughout our city. I just want to continue that process of staying close with the residents.
So last 2 years ago, November, you won the election.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, What do I do?
Yeah, yeah.
What was it like to go up to Lansing for the first time as state representative, getting sworn in and going to your first session?
It was surreal. It was a surreal moment.
As far as the age, you're probably one of the younger members
I'm
ever.
the fourth youngest in my caucus, the Democratic caucus. I think overall I may be in amongst the five youngest of the 48 legislators. Of the 148 between the Senate and the House, I think I'm in the five youngest category. So it's been a humbling experience. It's really humbling when I was able to sit on the House floor, and my mother accompanied me. And here is a woman who immigrated to this country when she was 5 years old, attended Lori herself, attended Forson herself, and she got to witness her son be sworn in as a state representative, as the son of immigrants, and to serve a community that provided her and provided me with everything. And I thought that moment was really beautiful, and we captured it with a photo where an immigrant got to see her son be sworn in. And I think that, if anything, is the epitome of the American dream. That defines that in America anything is possible if you work hard enough. And so
you were up there, and now the way the legislature works, you have various committee assignments, and is there a committee that you wanted to get onto, that you're on, that you didn't want to, or how did that all work out, your committee assignments?
So I have a healthcare background. I certainly wanted to be on health policy, something I'm very passionate about. I also wanted to be on insurance policy, understanding that auto insurance is one of these issues within our city that really impacts our residents. Tax policy is something I did not advocate for, but I was placed on. But I will say that committee was the committee in which I learned most about, in which I think I learned just the most overall. I did nothing more than just file my taxes on an annual basis. But I just learned.
That's a good thing to file on an annual basis.
It's very important to file your taxes.
Especially for politicians.
It is. But I got so much exposure as to how our whole tax system works, where the revenues come in from for the state, the various allocations for the school aid budget, K through 12, as well as the general budget. And I just had so much exposure and such a great learning experience that I've really come to really appreciate the Tax Policy Committee. And we've been able to accomplish a lot over the last almost 2 years.
So I take it you're on the Tax Policy Committee.
Yes.
And any other committees?
Health Policy, Insurance Committee.
So you got your wishes for those
I got my wishes for those. And then there's one more called Competitiveness Committee. And this is a catch-all committee. Anything, any bill or piece of legislation they perceive to make Michigan more competitive relative to the rest of the union, they will pass through this committee.
Okay, so explain to our viewers, what is it that a committee does? Like you're on this committee, but does legislation have to come through you, start there, edited and created and drafted and presented?
So how the process works is a representative first, comes up with the idea or ideas presented about a piece of legislation. And so you work with your team to draft that into an actual bill request. You submit the bill and it gets assigned to a committee. So if it's a bill pertaining to healthcare, it'll more than likely be assigned to health policy.
So you could be on the livestock committee, but have a tax proposal that would go to the tax committee.
Correct.
Okay.
And if the tax committee chairperson grants you a committee hearing on your bill, you then present before the tax committee. And so once the bill is assigned to a committee, you now have to convince the chairperson to give you a hearing on your bill. Once you get that committee hearing, you bring forth as to what this bill is a solution to what problem. And if you convince the majority of those on the committee to pass the bill out, then it goes to the general House floor. On the House floor, you have to convince the majority, again on the House floor, 51 representatives, to pass this bill. And if it gets passed, then it gets kicked over to the Senate committee. And usually the same Senate committee that it was in the House. And then you have to pass it out of the Senate committee, pass it out of the Senate floor. If any changes happened, it comes back to the House. If not, it'll go to the governor's desk.
And it may sound to the viewers like that's a convoluted process, but do you realize that sometimes it's not good to ram a piece of legislation through?
It certainly isn't. And in the short time that I've been there, nearly 2 years, it feels much longer. You see that oftentimes everyone can overlook small details which impact the legislation greatly. And the way it gets implemented is impacted greatly. And so it's great that we have this back and forth between the Senate and the House, because a bill will be amended in the Senate. It'll come back to the House, and we'll amend it again because we see the direction in which they want to take legislation. New ideas may have been presented, better ideas, and we get to implement those changes in that legislation before it ever gets signed into law.
So how many of the 148 legislators, how many people present potential bills and how many of those get enacted? Any percentage-wise or any
Yeah,
idea?
I think the percentage is thousands of bills get introduced. And I think it's in the teens, the percentage of bills that actually get passed, maybe even single digits.
So what do you guys do up there all the time? No.
Yeah. I mean, so of the thousands of bills, right? A lot of it is, the budget negotiation. So the entirety of the budget, all the money we appropriate and allocate towards roads, towards healthcare, towards whatever it might be, those are not considered bills. But that takes up a big chunk of time
Okay,
just to
so
negotiate the budget.
you have committee assignments, then you have the other.
Appropriations, which is all the budget negotiations.
Okay.
And that gets heavy every year right before the summer when Governor Snyder, who tends to always have his budget done early, has it done before July typically.
I had a friend who used to work in finance at Ford Motor Company, and he said anything less than $100,000 rounded down to a tenth.
Wow.
And that's so, but you're talking a state budget with billions of dollars.
Over $50 billion.
And so that number is really hard for me to grasp.
Yeah.
And so how does working with a budget of billions, as Carl Sagan would say,
Yeah.
how does that, how do you deal with that, Derek?
When you first get in, more senior members tell you when you start talking in the millions. I was first blown away that we're here talking, it's only $5 million, it's only $10 million. And you quickly realize relative to the budget, how small that actually is. Of the over $50 billion budget, actually only $10 billion is available to kind of allocate towards things we actually need allocated. More than half the budget is already set towards the Department of Health and Human Services. That goes to a lot of the programs that we operate and run throughout the state. And a lot of it might be federal drawdown dollars. So you really have about a $10 billion budget that we play with. And so when you talk, $1 million relative to $10 billion, it's not as a significant of an amount, although important to appropriate properly. And so, you just get acclimated to start talking in the tens of millions and the hundreds of millions. We want to talk about roads. We need $2 billion a year to fix roads moving forward. You want to talk about, the most recent announcement where Line 5 is building a tunnel around its pipelines under the Straits of Mackinac, and that that's going to be built through using $400 million of Enbridge's money. So you just become acclimated and used to talking about tens and hundreds of millions of dollars relative to the size of the budget.
So when you come home and you got the cable bill and other things, how do you downsize to that?
Yeah, luckily you have automatic payment withdrawal out of your checking account, and you don't focus too much on the bill. I actually don't really do cable anymore because you're rarely home. I'm in Lansing Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, really long days. When I come back, try to attend as many events as possible. And then Monday, between Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, you're out in the district attending events, trying to continue communicating with people, hosting town halls and coffee hours, and maintaining that contact.
And this is the thing that people don't seem to always understand, voters and constituents, is that you may be sitting there on the floor of the House or the Senate for a finite time, but there's all this other activity of your legislative duties, and then it's the running for re-election or the constituent services or
multiple hats,
all the different things that go on.
Yeah, I mean, my day, for example, today starts at waking up 6 o'clock in the morning. You get on the road by 6:30, 6:45 to get to Lansing at a reasonable time. It's about an hour and a half drive from here. I get to there by 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. I start my meetings every half hour on the clock until 1:30. Typically is when we have session. All the representatives get together. On the floor, it's not just voting. That's where the real negotiations happen, because all representatives, have to be on the floor for voting purposes. And so we'll vote for however many hours that day. It depends. Once we conclude the day, typically I'm back in Dearborn by 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, and then I start attending events until 10 o'clock in the evening typically, and then check my emails and any phone calls, messages after that, and repeat the next day.
Aren't you back in school too?
I did go back to school once I got elected. I applied for school at the same time I was running for office. I wanted to, I got into my MBA program at the Ross School of Business at U of M. I'm a Go Blue graduate. This will be my third U of M degree. And just using it to, educate myself on economic principles and use it as a means to just advance my understanding of our overall legislative process, and it's been very helpful thus far.
Well, I'm so tired of hearing that schedule. I'm going to take a quick nap during the break because I need to catch up with all that activity. We are going to take a break, though, talk about Kiwanis. We've got some spots put together by Kiwanis to talk about general principles. We'll be back with the busiest man in Dearborn and probably on the planet, State Representative Abdullah Hammoud. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Who is a kid? Well, that's a kid. And another. Look, a gaggle of them. Or is it a herd? Litter? Pride. But what about her? Tell her she's not a kid. Or him. So how do we tell who is a kid? Height? Age, maybe. But some of us have to grow up faster than others. A kid. A kid wants to make the world better. And one day, he just might. Is a kid fearless? Vulnerable? Strong? Nervous? Yes. 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 Kiwanis is 600,000 kids at heart doing all the little and big things it takes to help children around the world. Because kids need Kiwanis. All of them.
Welcome back to KiwaniTalk. I'm your host, Gary Gardner. On this episode, brought to you by the people from the Dearborn Kiwanis Club at Dearborn High School with our Dearborn State Representative. All this Dearborn stuff here going on with our Dearborn State Representative. He's a state legislator, but your district covers all of just of Dearborn, right?
About all of it except the aviation subdivision we have over on the east end.
And this is Abdullah Hammoud. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Busiest man on rock and roll. Okay.
Hi.
So you've been there for going on 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
What is the biggest accomplishment that you and your caucus and the legislature as a whole has put into place so far?
Yeah, I think, and I'll try to make it relevant to the city of Dearborn as it pertains to our Dearborn Public Schools, which we're very proud of and fond of. Even as a tractor, I'm still proud of Dearborn High and all the pioneers and yourself, who's an alum from this establishment. We were able to increase funding towards our schools by over nearly $5 million over this last year and a half, 2 year period, which I think is great given that we're the third biggest school district in the whole state. And most of our residents don't understand the size of Dearborn Public Schools. We're going nearly 22,000 students, and it's the third largest. I think we're behind Detroit Public Schools and Utica. And so we're also a growing school system, which is a great problem to have. So the additional resources that we have certainly been great.
They're just putting a new addition on this building here. It's amazing, and
I think the school board has been faced with a lot of capacity issues because of the rate at which we're growing, and I think they're dealing with those issues in the best manner that they can.
So the schools are a big thing. What else?
Earlier this year, we fought a hard battle against a local power plant from trying to open up a new generator in the south end of Dearborn, which would have added over 1,000 tons of pollution. And we actually won that battle because of the community mobilization and organizing effort that we had. Over 1,000 people signed a petition. We came in a strong show of force to a community hearing with the Department of Environmental Quality, and sitting down with the operators of this power plant due to the public backlash. They actually withdrew their permit, and were able to take that small victory home. Because in the south end of the community, most residents may not know, the asthma rate in the south end of the community is 2 to 4 times the rest of the state of Michigan. Your likelihood of contracting asthma. And I think that is just very unjust, that because of the zip code in which you live in, your likelihood of asthma is 2 to 4 times greater.
So the whole process, so you've got some accomplishments. How does it compare to what you envisioned before you went up to Lansing?
It's very different. The thing I learned quickly was it does not matter how smart you are. You can be a doctor, you can have as many degrees as you like. What matters is the relationships that you build and your ability to work across the aisle, but also work within the dynamics of your own caucus. That more than anything has allowed me, I believe, to hopefully to succeed in working in Lansing. It's over 50% of the bills I've introduced have bipartisan support, and I think that's something I'm very proud of. That I'm able to take this idea and garner support on both sides of the aisle for this solution. But that's the key to the entirety of the puzzle: building relationships.
You mentioned before the budget, and there's been a pretty much a economic resurgence in the state in the last few years. It started a while ago, but it's starting to come up now. How is that affecting the legislative process? We said we got this money, we can spend it, or do we want to marshal it and protect it more?
Yeah, I mean, although the economic resurgence has happened, I will say most family members may not feel it because underemployment is at an all-time high. You may have, unemployment may be at an all-time low, but underemployment is at an all-time high. So you have families working 2-3 jobs now, but still not making enough to provide a dignified meal back at home. But with that said, although the budget has seen some surplus in the school aid and such, the legislature, unfortunately, many of my colleagues have been passing out most of the surplus in the form of tax breaks and tax incentives to major corporations, which is something I tend to not agree with. I mean, we saw with Amazon, who refused to choose Detroit as a second headquarters because of a broken infrastructure and because of a broken public school system, which are both inadequately funded. And these tax breaks that we tend to pass out, I mean, they offered Amazon nearly $2 billion, I think greater. You gotta be, really concerned with the infrastructure and school system to turn away over $2 billion in incentives. I think it was nearly $4 billion actually. As opposed to us taking those resources and investing it here in Michigan. The number one thing businesses look for is talent. The number 3 thing they look for is infrastructure. The number 7 thing they look for is actually tax breaks. And so if we just reshifted our priorities and really focused on what these corporations and companies and generating small businesses throughout our community, I think we can do a much better job with our resources.
There's a very high likelihood because of the political makeup of your district, you're going to win re-election.
Hopefully.
And good luck with that.
Thank you.
And so what do you see as the big challenge that you have going forward in the next term is in the Michigan legislature? We'll get to the longer term after that, but what do you see?
Within this next term, my number one focus still remains to be auto insurance. If you live in the city of Dearborn, then you understand that we pay extremely high rates relative to all of our neighbors, with the exception of the city of Detroit. And I have introduced several pieces of legislation to try to eliminate what's known as redlining, where because of the zip code that you live in, you pay 3 to 5 times as much as anybody else. Where if you're a woman, you will pay more. If you don't have a college degree, you'll pay more. If you work a blue-collar job, you pay more. If you have bad credit, you pay more. I think eliminating what's known as non-driving factors is extremely important. I don't believe saying...
Is there not an actuarial relationship between those factors and the insurance costs?
I don't know what the relationship would be of, my mother's an auto insurance agent. She sells auto insurance here in the city of Dearborn. This is not a commercial for her. But she had a woman call her and try to take her husband off the policy because he passed away. And they increased her rate by $500 every 6 months because her husband passed away. I don't know what the relationship is between that and being a bad driver or a good driver. I think what you pay in auto insurance should be determined by how well of a driver you are. Are you getting a lot of tickets? Do you have a lot of accidents? I think those factors should be taken into consideration primarily and only relative to how much you pay in auto insurance.
So that's an issue that's near and dear to your heart, and I can see the passion coming out there.
Yeah, who knew auto insurance was the issue?
So next term, in the next 2-year term, you're going to be pretty much moving up the seniority list, which is, again, goes back to this term limits thing. When term limits were first proposed a number of years ago, I was all in and said, this is great, but turns out that it may not be as good an idea as we thought it was, and I think there's still some merit to it, but what's Abdullah Hammoud's take on term limits?
I am supportive of term limits. Now, the term limits that we have, I think, actually create more problems than not. Term limits were originally brought about as to ensure that representatives are acting in the best interests of the people and not of themselves, being that they'll only be there for a short, finite amount of time. But what has happened now is the institutional knowledge is now with the lobby corps. That is who has institutional knowledge, because you're there for 6 years maybe maybe 8 if you're in the Senate, or 14 if you're in both. But the lobby corps is there for much longer, and they have the knowledge, and they're the ones who are now educating elected officials on the issue, primarily of their stakeholders. So I think that needs to be addressed and changed. What tends to happen is legislators are acting more like home renters than homeowners, and they're making decisions based on the short term. They say, well, I can leave the budget to take a hit in the next term because I'll no longer be here. And so I just need to make sure that it's adequate enough for the end of this year, because come January, I'm out. And a lot of decisions tend to make that way.
I just heard an analogous thing, the communist Chinese. Americans are happy we get a 5-year plan. Chinese are working on a 200-year plan, and that's the difference. You need to look on that longer term. So, longer term for Abdullah Hammoud, where do you see yourself? You've got 4 more years in the House, 8 years in the Senate, and then the governor's race. That makes what, 12 years? 12 years from now. So we look for.
I don't know what's next. I never imagined myself running for the state house when I did. It was something that kind of just, happened through conversation and through encouragement of family and friends and community organizations. My focus right now is on being the best state rep I possibly can be for our community. And after the state house, we'll see what life has in store for us. I'll take it day by day then.
Take it day by day. So if you have a protege or a person that you was thinking about running from a different district for now, what would you tell them about? Is it a good idea, bad idea, or?
It is the most rewarding job you'll ever have, and we have the greatest district, I believe, in the whole state. And I say that objectively. Dearborn is such a beautifully diverse community that lives harmoniously with one another. And we have this diversity in our economic businesses, from major Fortune 500 companies to a small business community that's thriving. And so I'd encourage them to get to know their neighbors, their residents all throughout the community, because the conversations you have at the doors are the greatest part of the job. And those relationships that you build will last much longer than you will ever be in office.
And as we're down to our last minute or so, put a lot of miles in your car.
Yeah, we do. I do about nearly 25 to 30,000 miles a year on my car now, which is fairly difficult. I was leasing earlier. I had to get rid of a lease. I bought me a used Ford. So I'm driving that and just piling the miles on. But, what are you going to, at least gas is a little less now.
You got to do what you got to do.
Exactly.
Well, again, congratulations belatedly from 2 years ago.
Thank you.
Hopefully, congratulations again this election cycle.
Thank you so much.
By the way, get out there. What about, we got 30 seconds. What about people voting?
Get out and vote in November. It's extremely important. No longer can we be passive about our democracy. We need to participate. We need to express our voice, express our opinions. And the best way we do that is by voting come election day. So, regardless, I won't tell you who to vote for or what to vote for, but vote for candidates and for issues that really represent your values and your principles and your interests.
Abdullah Hammoud, thank you very much for coming on KiwaniTalk. It's good to see you again. And let's make it less than 2 years before you come back again.
Look forward to coming back soon.
Hope it's less than 2 years before you come back to KiwaniTalk. I'm Gary Gardner. See you next time. Bye-bye.